I'm going to put you on the spot here, and I don't know how you're going to answer this.
Okay.
And maybe, who knows? It's like, pretend I'm a new personal injury attorney, and I'm just covering all areas of the law. You know, what's something from your specialization that you can recall that just stands out that automatically, like, oh, if I was just trying every single case, I wouldn't have known this, and it really was effective in X situation?
Okay, so I need a little bit of clarification. So
Yeah.
I'm talking to a personal injury lawyer who is
Yep.
taking all things personal injury.
Let's just say I'm an attorney. I'm taking any case
Anything.
that walks in
Okay.
the door.
I mean, the first thing I would say is if you weren't a lawyer, what would you be doing? Right? Because the law covers so much ground. And I believe there is a facet of the law for every type of personality. Are you that person who would have been a therapist? Because that's me, right? I would have been a therapist if I wasn't a lawyer. And so personal injury for me is an opportunity to tap into both the intellectual part of me that stands out and the emotional part of me that stands out. I want to get that phone call at 10 o'clock at night when somebody is really upset or the worst thing in the world just happened. I want to be that shoulder. I enjoy that. I thrive in that environment. But there's so many lawyers I know who, if they see a client calling in on their phone, it's like, oh, that is the last thing I want to do right now, right? So I think if you find that area of your personality that you love, you can fit that to the law, and it's so much easier to develop that niche and that specialty when you're doing something you enjoy.
Such a great answer. Right? Would you say that there's a lot of fear, though? Like, let's say, I've heard that there's an attorney that specializes in these, ceiling collapses, these, there's like very niche where maybe it's particular on dog bites or slip and fall. Do you think that when you do shrink your TAM, your total addressable market, that just by doing that, you're putting a big flag over your head, and then you're easier to be found? Like what goes through your head? Because I would imagine that the fear that you're talking about, and sometimes is like they're afraid they're not going to get any cases.
Right. But the problem is, if we go back to, okay, who's our consumer? Who are our referring lawyers? Who are our referring people? Right? They are thinking about one particular case. Right? Let's say it's a brain injury case. So they're going to think about who in this space, who in San Diego does brain injury work. And somebody who does a little bit of everything is not going to be the person that comes to mind. It's going to be the person who either tried the most recent brain injury case, got the highest recent brain injury verdict, or is constantly speaking and running conferences on that specific issue. So the fear drives people to say, hey, no matter what kind of case it is, I want to be the one who they're thinking of. So I don't want to close the door to slip and falls. I don't want to close the door to medical malpractice. But the reality is, by keeping all those doors open, none of them are open, because you're never going to be the person who they think of in that moment for that case.
Yeah, and then that's where I'd imagine when you do get the case, then the challenge is if you're doing everything where then someone else specializes, you may lose that case later.
Right.
But if you're the expert, you probably retain them.
Right, exactly. Or if you don't get the case as the expert initially, then that lawyer who gets into trouble because they don't know what they're doing is going to call you and refer you the case later. So you may get it in the beginning or you may get it in the end, but if you're the expert, it's going to find its way to you.
I couldn't agree more. And that reminds me, I talk about Naval Ravikant a lot. He wrote this almanac on his philosophies, and he talked about how these people spend all this money to find this gold at the bottom of the ocean. But then what do they have to do? They have to hire the expert diver to extract the gold. And if you're just the expert, you are attracted to these opportunities.
Mm-hmm. That's a great example.
Thank you. Yeah, so let's continue to dive into trials, and you've got an incredible 9-figure verdict. I don't know how many people have a 9-figure verdict, but so first of all, that's just an amazing testament to your abilities. So first of all, congratulations to that.
Thank you.
And, sharing what you can, you've been doing this for 15 years. Is there, how do you get creative to get maximum value? And then this is super broad coming from a non-attorney here, right? Mm-hmm. What goes into the working up a case like that to ultimately getting that verdict? Walk me, the summarized version, but what goes into that big of a case?
I feel like that is what separates me from the pack. Is that I don't have a cookie cutter response to the different types of cases that I've tried. Every case is unique. It's its own. Every client is different. And I really dive in to the case, to what the motivations of the different actors were in my case. Like I said, I probably would have been a therapist. So I'm constantly looking at everybody and what they do and saying, well, why would they do that? Well, why would they do that? And it's that childlike curiosity that keep asking, well, why? If you have kids, it never stops, right? But if you can retain that childlike curiosity about your cases, you get to the human core, which is the part of the case that everybody, no matter what socioeconomic background you are, no matter what your political leanings are, that core of humanity that understands the behavior. That's where the case lies. But it takes diving in and becoming part of, the scene and putting yourself in everybody else's shoes to find that core.
And that's that empath that you said, the therapist coming out. That's like, that's putting on that empathy hat. And that's incredible. I want to take it a different direction. Most people don't talk about this, and I have no idea. Is there a case that you lost that had an impact on you? In retrospect, you're like, I should have went this direction. I should have told this story. Or, is there a case that stands out that you're like, geez, this is the one that comes to mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a medical malpractice case. I had 3 defendants. Every defendant agreed that somebody did something wrong. They all disagreed as to who did it. And so what I ended up with was a jury that was very split. Again, the jury all agreed that somebody did something wrong. They just disagreed on who did that wrong thing. And so I couldn't get 9 as to any particular defendant. Now, we have a jury instruction that helps in that situation in California, where, if the jury can't figure out who, like if all these acts combine and the jury can't figure out who did the wrong thing, then everybody's responsible. But the judge didn't give us that instruction, which I do think was appealable error. The decision was made by the client, by my firm, that we were not going to go ahead and appeal. And that decision haunts me. Number one, because I think that my client deserved the instruction. I think if we had the instruction, we would have gotten a very favorable verdict for her. But for reasons outside of my control, we didn't go down that path. So then going back to trial, what could I have done differently in trial? I made the strategy call in trial to tell the jury who I thought was most responsible in closing. And looking back on that, I wish I had not have. I wish I had just said, look, somebody's responsible. They all agree. It is your job to figure out who or what combination. And if you can't agree, put it on everybody. I wish I had not taken a position to favor some defendants over others. That was really me thinking that the jury was going to be thinking the same thing as me, when the reality is, with so many different people, with so many different backgrounds, and the way that they're perceiving each individual defendant on the stand, there was no way to know, no way to be sure enough to make that strategy call. So that, that's kind of the one that haunts me.
Well, thank you for sharing that experience, and you told it so clearly that I'm sure that could help maybe a personal injury attorney listening that has a similar situation. You never know, and I appreciate you sharing that. That's awesome to look at things in retrospect, and I'm sure you're like, that's the one I wish I could go back and change. But guess what? When you have the next trial that maybe has a similar situation, you can apply that.
Right. And, every trial has that moment. It comes in different ways. But as trial lawyers, we live and breathe the case for years. And it's human nature. We apply what we're thinking and the lens through which we view the world to everybody else around us. So there are so many moments where you have to check yourself and say, hey, is everybody in the room where I am? Or should I play it a little more safe?
Got it. So I want to switch gears just a little bit. I want you to put your teaching hat on.
Okay.
Right. So you teach advanced trial advocacy and beyond preparing for the case. If you had limited time to prepare, where would you focus your time and energy?
Oh, I'm in that situation all the time. If I have limited time to prepare, I am focusing my time and energy on cross-examination of the defense corporate witnesses, the defendant bad actor, or the defense experts. Because we win cases when we can prove our case through the other side. There's this hierarchy of believability, right? And my client said it is at the very bottom of the poll. At the very top is, look, everybody in this room agrees. So that is where I could focus the case. I would focus the case is, what am I going to get the other side to agree to?
Fantastic answer. When selecting a jury, how do you sniff out prejudice?
It's hard. And especially, it's a little different now. We're getting more time in voir dire, but back when I first started trying cases, we would have like 20 minutes, 30 minutes for 40 people. So my go-to on sniffing out prejudice is making everything okay. Whatever your opinion is, whatever your gut reaction is right now, right here, right now, that gut, it's okay. And so to make an environment where diverging opinions are okay and comfortable, which is harder and harder and harder to do now in our climate. And to say that, sometimes the patriotic thing to do is not to serve, right? To acknowledge that this particular case is not the right case for me. It is just as patriotic not to serve as it is to serve in the right case.
Love that. And I got a couple other kind of rapid fire ones here. Maybe this isn't rapid fire. What makes a winning opening statement?
Credibility. By being able to say, this is what the evidence is going to show, tell a persuasive story, but 100% you better prove it.
Fantastic. We had Kyle Newsome, we've had, a few other attorneys on, and they really utilize tech as a huge advantage to tell their story. Is there a particular technology that you couldn't live without?
All of it, including low tech. I use PowerPoint, I use models, I use, Trial Director, I use a white piece of paper and a pen. I think technology is important. The most important thing, though, is to use technology differently throughout the course of a trial so that people stay interested.
Fantastic. And, you're a member of the American Board of Trial Advocates, only extended to those who's demonstrated professionalism and civility in the courtroom. And, what can attorneys do on an individual basis to be more civil? I know it's super broad. Mm-hmm. And then if you do get angry in the courtroom, how do you maintain your professionalism?
Yeah. I think it is so important because I think what people don't understand is that the way that we act, the way that we treat each other has ripples throughout the community. People remember that. People talk about it. Even if you don't realize it, you will develop a reputation. And so from the moment you start law school or you move into a community, you are building your long-term reputation. It takes an entire lifetime to build, and it takes a split second to lose. And that credibility becomes so important. I have had cases where the judge is somebody who has seen me in contexts other than trial, or who I have tried cases against, or who I have worked for. And because I have led my life in every context with integrity, when that moment to make a judgment call comes, they remember that. And I'm the one who has that integrity in the courtroom. I'm the one who has that reputation. And so if they're on the fence, I'm going to get the benefit of that. That's not why I do it, but it's certainly an important result that inures to the benefit of my clients.